another motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Sulem Urbina took to social media and made the announcement that she's going to be back on October 30th against, get this, Marlen Esparza. Sulem Urbina and Marlen Esparza campaign in the flyweight division. Both girls fight under the Golden Boy Promotions banner, and this fight is set to go down on the undercard of Munguia versus Jansen. And it's the weirdest thing, because when I had Sulem Urbina on the show, I asked her if fights with Senicia Estrada, Marlen Esparza were on her radar, if those fights were a possibility.
Is it possible that you, Senicia or Marlen, could fight? Because you're at or around the same weight and you're on the same stable.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the plan with Golden Boy. I think they want to do a little mix-up right there. I think they want us all to get belts and then unify. Hopefully the one with Marlen happens sooner than later. I think, she beat me in the amateurs. She was on Team USA, I was on Team Mexico, and it's a fight that definitely needs to happen. I feel that the pros, I'm better off now. The pros have benefited me a little more in the way of my style.
That interview was conducted here on the channel just 2 weeks ago. Just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this potential fight, this potential matchup, and how Sulem Urbina wanted the fight sooner than later, but she, like I, expected that the fight would happen later on down the line, after perhaps both combatants would have picked up world titles of their own, making their inexorable match a unification match, a unification fight. It seems that Golden Boy Promotions has so decided to hit the gas on this thing, and we're going to be seeing it at the end of October on the undercard of Munguia versus Jansen. And when the news first broke, when I caught wind of it, I almost immediately leaned towards Sulem Urbina for the victory, as Sulem Urbina, she debuted as a professional a tad bit earlier than Marlen Esparza. She debuted in 2016, whereas Marlen debuted as a professional in 2017. Sulem has more professional bouts, more time inside of the ring, in the pro ranks, than Marlen does. Sulem Urbina sports a professional record of 12-0 with 2 KOs, to Marlen Esparza's professional record of 7 wins and 1 loss. Sulem has been involved in more professional contests. She has a tad bit more experience than Marlen. To top it all off, Sulem Urbina was actually in action earlier this year. Before COVID shut everything down, she did lock horns with the very experienced Noemi Bosques in February, towards the end of that month. Len, she hasn't had a fight since November of last year, when she dropped that decision to Senicia Estrada.
She's been out of action 11 months, roughly.
So essentially, you're talking about a fighter who has a high ceiling, yes, and is a skilled operator, but is a fighter that is coming off a loss, roughly 11 months of inactivity, with less professional experience than their adversary. It's for this reason that when the news broke, almost immediately, I leaned towards Sulem Urbina to win this thing. These two girls have met several times already in the amateur ranks. In those instances, it was Marlen Esparza that received the nod, whereas this is taking place in the professional ranks, and as we all know, there's a difference. I think that there is a lot working for Sulem Urbina here, and quite a bit working against Marlen. Marlen, she was supposed to fight Jackie Calvo, and for some reason, that fight fell through. From Jackie Calvo, it turned into Noemi Bosques, the same Noemi Bosques that Sulem Urbina faced earlier this year. It was reported that Marlen might be facing her, and then that fell through. And now, she's facing yet another tough, unbeaten contender, like the tough, unbeaten contender she fought the last time in Senicia Estrada. I've no doubts that Sulem Urbina would relish the opportunity to exact vengeance upon Marlen Esparza for what took place in the amateur ranks and what meetings they've already had there. This is being billed as a world title eliminator. No word if it's a final eliminator, if the winner of this match will go on to become a mandatory challenger of some kind. Better still, what I can see happening on the other side of this fight is moving one step forward towards a world title shot, yes, but I think that the winner of this match could see themselves fighting Senicia Estrada. For Marlene, that would be the opportunity to avenge the loss in the last fight. That would be
Redemption.
a chance for recompense. And if Sulem Urbina emerges the victor, I can see her moving on from this and fighting Senicia Estrada as well. It appears that things are very much the way Sulem Urbina said they were, that the people at Golden Boy, they want to get a round-robin kind of situation going between their three flyweight contenders, between these three girls. And I like the idea of a round-robin kind of situation with these three girls, with this trio of fighters, because regardless of how you mix and match the names, you're going to get a firefight every single time, as every single one of these matchups has the potential to be a barn burner. So we'll talk more about this fight as the fight date approaches. We'll get into the fight mechanics of the fight, how it's going to look, and why. For now, keep your eyes peeled for Urbina versus Esparza on October 30th on the undercard of Munguia versus Johnson. Moving on, Sean Gibbons, who manages the career of WBO champion John Riel Casimero, posted this via his social media. The caption reads, "Viva Casimero, the monster hunter is looking for the Japanese turtle." And this is a very conflicting statement. And it's conflicting because it doesn't exactly line up with another set of comments made by Sean Gibbons himself. In the article where Casimero, John Riel Casimero, was quoted as saying that he truly believed that he would have knocked Inoue out, Sean Gibbons was quoted as saying, "We're going to look at what Inoue does. We're not locked into Inoue anymore. Guillermo Rigondeaux is a champion at 118.
What?
No, he's not. Luis Neri, if he wins the WBC at 122 pounds, Casimero has shown interest in him and going for a fourth world title. Everything is on the table. Whatever's the best opportunity, the quickest that we can make something happen, we'll do it. We're not going to get put into another situation where we're waiting for anybody again. We did that, and that game's over. Casimero is a world champion. If the Inoue fight can be revisited in the right way, we will. If not, there's a lot of other opportunities out there." Gibbons guided Casimero in a different direction than Inoue because it became clear that fight wouldn't work financially without fans being able to attend in Las Vegas. Inoue will meet Maloney without fans in attendance, within promoter Top Rank's bubble. What it really came down to was to do a fight of this magnitude, Gibbons said of Inoue Casimero, for the MGM and everybody that was involved. It was kind of based on having Japanese fans there and bringing the high rollers in, and unfortunately, you couldn't do that. So it was just a simple economic thing. It just didn't work out because of COVID-19. It had nothing to do with money, per se. It was just the situation we were in. It just couldn't happen.
How do you say that it had nothing to do with money per se, but in the same breath say that you were hoping to bring in the Japanese high rollers?
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. He went on to say, Inoue's defense is horrible, and styles make fights. Look what Nonito Donaire did against Inoue. Donaire was 37 going on 50, and he lit him up. Casimero is what Donaire was in his late 20s. He can fight as well as Donaire. He can punch as well as Donaire. And he has killer instinct, which Nonito has lost. Nonito had the ability to fight with Inoue, but he didn't have that extra gear that Casimero has these days.
These guys are clout chasing.
That's what I see here. These guys can't shut the fuck up about Inoue. Whether it's Sean Gibbons or John Riel Casimero himself, they are name-dropping this guy heavy as of late. After the Duke Micah fight that was on the undercard of the Charlo doubleheader this past weekend, who'd you see John Riel Casimero talking about immediately after the fight?
You know, I'm strong, man. Inoue!
Yeah,
You're
the real monster, baby, the real monster.
Man. You're a monster? Motherfucker? No, you are no monster. You are a Chinese, Japanese turtle. No monster, man. Inoue scared me. Fuck, motherfucker, come on. You next.
It's cringeworthy, is what it is. It's cringeworthy how both Sean Gibbons and John Riel Casimero are so obviously clout-chasing Naoya Inoue's name, trying to use his buzz to get a buzz of their own, trying to bring in his fans to finance this thing because, let's be honest, John Riel Casimero doesn't have that many fans, doesn't have the buzz of a Naoya Inoue. Sean Gibbons himself said it. They were relying on bringing in the Japanese high rollers. That's who you were hoping financed this thing. That's how you were going to get this fight off the ground. He didn't say he was relying on the Filipino high rollers to finance this thing, and he didn't say he was relying on bringing in the Filipino high rollers. No, he said he was relying on bringing in the Japanese high rollers. And who's from Japan? Naoya Inoue is from Japan. And that is why, even though the fight's not happening, and in all likelihood the fight's not next, these guys can't shut the fuck up about Inoue. It seems to me that both Sean Gibbons and John Riel Casimero have adopted the PBC formula, the PBC model, to where they will constantly name drop a fighter they have no intention of fighting. What do I mean by that? Look at the alternatives that Sean brought up. Luis Neri, a PBC fighter. Guillermo Rigondeaux, a PBC fighter.
Coincidence?
Yeah, you're talking about how there could be fights with them, but that's not the guy that you're name-dropping. The guy that you're name-dropping just so happens to be the guy you're least likely to fight. The fight that you essentially walked away from. Sean's talking about how John might fight Rigo, and he might fight Luis Neri, but who's he calling out immediately after the Duke Micah fight? Naoya Inoue. And it just so happens that, if I'm being honest, Naoya Inoue has a much bigger following. He's a much bigger celebrity where he's from than either Guillermo Rigondeaux or Luis Neri. So it's not a coincidence what we're seeing here. It's not a coincidence that this is the guy they consistently keep name-dropping in spite of having walked away from that fight. You say it's not about money, but in the same breath you say you were hoping to bring in the Japanese high rollers. Not the Filipino high rollers, the Japanese high rollers. And as a boxing fan, I don't appreciate these kinds of shyster tactics. One fighter name-dropping another, having no actual intention of fighting him, rather using that fighter's name to get himself a buzz, to have articles written about him, to gain himself some publicity.
Con artist.
Because that's what I see here, and that is, as we all know, the PBC formula. I don't appreciate those shyster tactics because essentially what you want to do is take the boxing fans, the boxing community, for a ride. You want them to believe you're after Naoya Inoue, when in reality, you have no intention of fighting him. Spare me the violin solo about how a fight of this magnitude needs to be in front of the Japanese high rollers, when you know what? A bigger fight of greater magnitude is happening very soon, in the absence of a live audience. A fight that, generally speaking, has had more build-up than Inoue versus Casimero, the fight between Teofimo Lopez and Vasil Lomachenko. That's a bigger fight than this fight, and that's going down with no crowd, with no audience present. So you can miss me with that excuse about a fight of this magnitude.
Yeah, fucking right, it's not about money.
You don't want to take on somebody like Naoya Inoue, the monster, unless there's a financial incentive, unless there's a big purse involved. Otherwise, it's too risky for you, and you can isolate yourself on PBC Island and fight Duke Micahs till the cows come home. Expect more of these hollow call-outs from the Casimero people moving forward, as I don't believe Naoya Inoue is ever going to get the chance to close this guy's mouth, because they're not going to give it to him. They have every intention of using his name and coattailing his success without actually ever fighting him. And finally, set to go down on October 31st, the same day as Usyk versus Chisora, Murat Gassiev is set to make his heavyweight debut, and ideally, he'd be making that heavyweight debut on the undercard of a fight like Usyk versus Chisora. But this fight with Kevin Johnson, this fight which is basically Murat Gassiev dipping his toe in the pool of the heavyweight division, this fight is going down in Russia. And it does appear that Murat Gassiev, in his maiden voyage to the heavyweight division, has so decided to go the WBA route, as there is a WBA trinket title on the line, the quote-unquote international version of the title. This is the kind of fight that could see Murat Gassiev eventually locking horns with, I don't know, Trevor Bryan, the WBA's interim champion, or perhaps Manuel Char, the WBA's regular champion. This fight for this baby belt could be a segue into those fights, and Murat Gassiev is still an interesting character to me. Outside of a world title conversation, I could still go for fights like Gassiev versus Daftaev, or Gassiev versus Makhmudov, Gassiev versus Babic, Gassiev versus Bakoli, Gassiev versus Michael Hunter. You know that Meiris Briedis very recently contemplated a move upstairs to the heavyweight division after having won the final phase of the World Boxing Super Series. Those two guys didn't actually get to lock horns in the tournament, and I could go for that in the heavyweight division, provided Mavis Breedis makes that move upstairs. Essentially, there are lots of good, intriguing matchups out there for Murat Gassiev, and all he's got to do is get through Kevin Johnson. I don't think this is going to qualify as Murat Gassiev's Matchroom debut, as this doesn't appear to be a Matchroom card. This is under the Russian Federation, the Russian Commission. Murat has yet to have a fight under the Matchroom banner, in spite of having signed on with them, and who knows where that relationship actually is here today, as I think that relationship was forged over a year ago and nothing has materialized from it. Not even sure that DAZN is going to pick this card up. Quite honestly, I don't know where you'd be able to watch this thing if you wanted to watch it. Though if the relationship still is intact, that does open a lot of doors for a fighter like Murat Gassiev. That opens doors to a Dave Allen fight, a David Price fight. It could help expose Murat Gassiev to the fans over there in the United Kingdom by matching him against some very familiar faces. Murat Gassiev remains a very interesting character in spite of having been away from the ring for so long. I'm very much interested in seeing what the next chapter of this fighter's career is going to look like. Keep your eyes peeled for this on October 31st.